Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to World Affairs in Context on Substack and Patreon for extra content and join our community. President Trump's meeting with President Javier Milei of Argentina at the White House on October the 14th sent shockwaves across both Washington and Buenos Aires. What was expected to be a relatively routine diplomatic exchange quickly turned into a statement of intent, a signal that Washington is willing to take very bold, even risky steps, risky with U.S. taxpayer funds, to reshape its economic and political alliances in Latin America in order to help Milei stay in power ahead of the upcoming Argentina's October 26 midterm elections. Just days before the meeting, the Trump administration announced a staggering $20 billion lifeline to Argentina. Officially, the United States is giving $20 billion to a foreign government without any conditionality at all. The same government that has taken on 1/3 of all debt issued by the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. U.S. Treasury Secretary Bessent said that this is meant to be a currency swap to stabilize the peso. It's one of the most aggressive U.S. interventions in a foreign financial system in decades, and it is drawing both praise and sharp criticism, which we will discuss in this video.
So it's a little bit like that with, if you take a look at Argentina, if the president doesn't win, I know the person that he'd be running against, I believe, we probably have the person. A person is extremely far left and a philosophy that got Argentina into this problem in the first place. So we would not be generous with Argentina if that happened. If he loses, we are not going to be generous with Argentina.
Now, if you're a U.S. taxpayer, leave me a comment and let me know, how do you feel about the U.S. government bailing out a foreign state with your tax dollars? How does that make you feel? Let us know in the comments below. We would love to hear from you. As the two presidents met in the Oval Office, Trump hinted that a free trade agreement could be on the table, but of course, this is something that Washington hasn't seriously discussed with Buenos Aires in years, and it is clear that this is about far more than just trade. The White House lifeline represents a strategic bet, and not only on Argentina's economy, but on Milei himself. That is key. The libertarian president, who is famous for bringing a chainsaw, if you recall, on stage to symbolize his plans to cut government spending, is now fighting for political survival, and the United States is ready and willing to intervene. Milei's radical austerity policies, which were designed to tame inflation and to end decades of fiscal mismanagement, have proven deeply unpopular with many voters. With elections looming, Trump's endorsement and, of course, billions in U.S. support could just offer Milei some hope, a temporary respite. For the United States, it's $20 billion that it will never see again, ever. And you would agree that it would be quite naive to believe that Argentina will pay that money back or that it will return to the U.S. taxpayers. When asked about China's growing presence in Argentina, Trump brushed off concerns, saying, well, it's China, it's natural, it's not going to mean anything in the end, he said. But he then quickly added a warning. He said, you certainly shouldn't be doing anything having to do with the military with China. And he was addressing Milei at that time. The message was very, very clear. Trade is tolerable as it should be, but deeper strategic alignment with China is not acceptable to Washington. The United States does see China's economic expansion in Latin America as a threat, and it sees supporting a puppet government in Argentina as a convenient way to counter Beijing, at least somewhat. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who has become the architect effectively of this U.S. rescue plan, clarified that the aid isn't conditional on Argentina cutting its currency ties with China. But then he did make one condition clear: if Argentina reverses Milei's market reforms and drifts back toward the old Peronist economic model, Bessent said that would cause a U.S. rethink. So in other words, if the people of Argentina want a new president, if they don't want Milei, it's not the time and the place for democracy. Milei will remain in power, propped up by $20 billion from the United States. Bessent's statement alone raises eyebrows in Washington. Critics say that this lifeline, coming so close to Argentina's elections, looks less like an economic rescue and more like a political endorsement or worse, direct foreign intervention. Some Democrats, for example, now argue that it's an attempt to prop up a right-wing ally and potentially influence the outcome of a foreign election. At the same time, U.S. farmers are very, very uneasy. Argentina recently sold millions of tons of soybeans to China, and this move undercut American exports amid ongoing trade tensions with Beijing. For them, Washington's $20 billion bailout feels like a reward for a competitor and not an ally. Still, Bessent and his team insist that this isn't charity. They want you to know that it is strategy. The Treasury has even purchased Argentinian pesos directly, which in and of itself is an extraordinary move that signals deep U.S. involvement in the country's currency markets. The goal here, and this is according to Bessent himself, is to stabilize Argentina long enough for Milei's reforms to take root and to restore investor confidence. In an interview to Bloomberg, former Treasury Secretary Lawrence Summers, who helped design the U.S. rescues of Mexico and Brazil in the 1990s, called this move new and unconventional. He pointed out that the United States has never before bought a pegged emerging market currency under attack. This is a clear sign of how extraordinary this intervention really is. Summers noted three key aspects that make this deal stand out. First, the United States is acting alone, without help from the IMF or other major economies. Second, the risk exposure is massive, truly massive, for a single economy to bear. It is far greater than past rescues. And third, there's no explicit conditionality, no public agreement actually tying the funds to specific reforms, which is, of course, very unconventional. So that is a sharp contrast to the IMF's strict policy frameworks. At the same time, Summers acknowledged that politics have often shaped U.S. aid decisions, and he compared the current plan to the Marshall Plan after World War II and to U.S. backing of Boris Yeltsin's government in the 1990s. Both are cases of Washington spending a lot of money to support, quote, the good guys as a strategic move. And if it wasn't for Yeltsin effectively selling out in the early 1990s, perhaps things would have been different in Eastern Europe. But let's go back to the topic of this video. I recently uploaded an entire video that is dedicated to the collapse of Argentina, and I believe it has more than 300,000 views right now. You're welcome to watch it next for more background on this. Argentina's economy hangs by a thread. Inflation remains sky high, the peso is under constant pressure, and public anger over austerity continues to grow. However, Trump just said about Milei, he's really on the verge of tremendous economic success. What that means in reality remains to be seen as Washington prepares a new intervention in Latin America. Stay tuned, I will keep you posted. Thank you so much for watching, and thanks for joining me today. I hope that you consider supporting my work. Become a subscriber here on YouTube, on Substack, and Patreon. It means a lot. I would love to see you on my alternative platforms that are linked in the description below. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you back here tomorrow. Bye for now.